In 1875 Texas, Abigail O'Connor stepped off the train believing she was walking into the promise of a new life, but instead found herself face to face with danger wearing the mask of a future husband. Walter Farley's charm quickly crumbled into something darker, leaving her stranded in a land where fear traveled faster than the wind. Escape seemed impossible, until she crossed paths with Nathan Aldridge, a gentle rancher whose quiet strength offered her the first glimmer of hope. As threats closed in and courage awakened within her, Abigail discovered that destiny isn't found, it's claimed, even in the wildest corners of the West. Abigail O'Connor stepped down from the dusty stagecoach with her gloved hands shaking, the heat of the 1875 Texas sun pressing against her like a wall. Boston seemed a lifetime away, its quiet streets, polished storefronts, and the little attic room where she had written that bold, desperate letter to a stranger named Walter Farley. That letter had been her only escape from a life shrinking around her, a life filled with debt she hadn't created, responsibilities she couldn't shoulder, and the constant reminder that she had no family left to lean on. A mail-order marriage promised stability, purpose, and maybe, in time, affection. She had come seeking hope, even if it meant marrying a man she'd never met. Walter stood near the hitching post when she spotted him, a tall, broad man with a stern face and eyes too sharp for comfort. Abigail forced a polite smile and stepped forward, smoothing her wrinkled traveling dress. But instead of greeting her with warmth or relief, Walter's gaze swept over her like he was appraising a horse he wasn't certain he wanted. His mouth tightened, and something cold flickered in his eyes. "You're Abigail," he said, not a question, just a flat statement. "Yes," she replied softly, reaching for grace despite her nerves. I'm glad to finally meet you, Mr. Farley." He didn't offer to take her trunk. Didn't offer a kind word. Instead, he glanced around as if making sure no one was watching too closely. Abigail's heart began to sink with the weight of disappointment, though she scolded herself for expecting too much. After all, many men were not polished or gentle, ranching was hard, and the West hardened people. Still, something about his stare unsettled her, like an unspoken storm hovering just out of sight. Walter motioned toward his wagon. "Come on. We've got a long ride." No welcome. No smile. No inquiry about her journey. As the wagon rattled out of town, Abigail noticed the tension in his jaw whenever she asked a question. When she commented on the open landscape or the quiet beauty of the plains, he responded only with grunts or clipped phrases. Her excitement, fragile as glass, began to fracture. She had expected nerves, perhaps awkwardness, but not this simmering, unpredictable edge. "You said in your letters you lived alone," she said gently, trying to draw him into conversation. Walter's grip tightened around the reins. "I do. And I like it that way." Something in his tone made her sit straighter. "I only meant to understand the home I'd be joining." His eyes cut toward her sharply. "What matters is you do as you're told. A wife is supposed to make a man's life easier, not fuss with questions." Abigail's stomach nodded. That wasn't what he wrote. His letters had been almost tender, filled with promises of starting a peaceful life together, raising a family, building a home with mutual respect. She had read those words when she cried herself to sleep in Boston, clinging to the belief that somewhere out west was a man willing to cherish her. But this man was not the man she had imagined. By the time they reached Walter's property, an isolated, weather-beaten cabin surrounded by rough land, Abigail's unease had grown into fear. The yard was cluttered with broken tools and empty bottles. The windows were darkened by soot. The porch sagged dangerously. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a warning. Walter abruptly grabbed her trunk and shoved it inside. "You'll sleep in the back room," he said. "We'll get the wedding done in a day or two." "A day or two," she echoed, startled. She barely knew him. Walter stepped close, too close, his breath thick with whiskey he hadn't had earlier. "I paid for your travel. You're here to be my wife. Don't make this difficult." Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Abigail stepped back, the instinct to flee rising like fire inside her, but she forced herself to keep calm. She needed time to think, to decide, to pray for a way out if things grew worse. She had no friends here, no family, no protection. Running blindly could get her killed in a land where danger hid behind every canyon and stranger's shadow. "Of course," she whispered, her voice steady though her hands trembled. "I only need rest from the long journey." Walter stared at her, suspicious, but finally grunted and stepped away. "Don't wander off. Coyotes'll get you, or worse." As he stomped outside, Abigail exhaled shakily, pressing a hand against her chest. Her dream was unraveling fast, and she knew, deep in her bones, that the man she had come to marry was not just unkind. He was dangerous. She lay awake most of that night, listening to Walter's heavy footsteps outside, the slam of the door, the muttered curses. Every sound made her flinch. By dawn, she had made a quiet decision: she needed help. Somehow, some way, she needed to get out before Walter's temper turned into something more. Her chance arrived in the form of a stranger. The next morning, Abigail stepped outside to find Walter shouting at a ranch hand who had ridden up on a palomino horse, an argument she had walked into unknowingly. The ranch hand's hat shaded his eyes, but his voice was calm despite Walter's fury. "Nate Aldridge," Walter barked, "I told you to stay off my land." "Your fence line runs crooked," the man replied coolly. "Your cattle keep wandering onto my range. Thought you might want to fix that." Abigail studied him cautiously. He was tall, well-built, with sun-warmed skin and dark blonde hair tucked beneath his hat. His eyes, when they shifted to her, were steady, observant, and startlingly gentle. Walter caught her gaze and scowled. "What are you looking at? Get inside." Abigail lowered her eyes, embarrassment and fear burning her cheeks. But before she could retreat, Nathan Aldridge addressed her with a polite tip of his hat. "Ma'am." His respectful tone was so different from Walter's harshness that it stunned her. Something in her chest loosened at the simple kindness of the gesture. Walter stepped between them like a guard dog. "She ain't got nothing to do with you." Nathan didn't react to the hostility. He simply nodded once, his expression unchanged, though Abigail sensed he had noticed the fear she was trying desperately to hide. When Nathan rode off, Walter cursed and kicked at a bucket, muttering threats Abigail knew were meant for her ears too. But that brief moment, one glance from a stranger with steady eyes, lingered with her all day. That afternoon, while Walter left for town in one of his darker moods, Abigail dared to walk a little down the road, just far enough to breathe freely. To her surprise, Nathan appeared again, this time slowing his horse as he approached. "Ma'am," he said with quiet concern. "You all right?" The question nearly broke her. She lifted her chin, but her voice quivered. "I'm adjusting." Nathan dismounted, respectful distance between them. "Forgive my saying so, but you don't look safe out here." It was reckless to speak. Dangerous even. But Abigail felt something inside her crumble. "I thought I was coming to marry a good man," she whispered. "But Walter, he's not who he pretended to be." Nathan's expression hardened, but not at her. "You need help." Her breath caught. In that single, simple question, Abigail felt the first true spark of hope since she stepped off the stagecoach. For the first time since arriving in Texas, she felt seen. Heard. Protected. "Please," she said softly. "I think I do." And in Nathan Aldridge's steady presence, Abigail sensed the beginning of something she never expected to find in this rough, dangerous land. A chance at safety. A chance at courage. And perhaps, one day, a chance at love. The days that followed Abigail's unsettling encounters with Walter Farley revealed more than she ever wished to know. The man she had come to Texas to marry was not simply difficult, he was unpredictable, volatile, and hollowed out by years of violence he carried like a second skin. His temper sparked at the smallest things, an overcooked meal, a misplaced tool, even a simple question. Each time, Abigail felt another thread of fear wrap itself around her heart. But she had no family in Texas, no friends, and no way back to Boston. Her world had shrunk to the size of the boarding house room she rented and the wide, merciless land that stretched around her. She felt trapped between shame for having made such a reckless decision, and terror at what might happen if she stayed. It was Nathan Aldridge who first noticed the shadows beneath her eyes. Nathan's visits to town were rare, he preferred the quiet rhythm of ranch life, but when he saw Abigail standing outside the general store one morning, her hands trembling as she tried to steady her basket, something in him paused. He had heard about the new bride who had come all the way from Boston to marry Walter Farley. The town gossiped quickly, and most said the same thing, pity the poor girl. Nathan approached her gently, as one might approach a frightened mare. "You all right, Miss O'Connor?" he asked softly. She startled, but the moment she looked into his eyes, steady, calm, impossibly kind, something inside her loosened. She didn't know why she trusted him. Perhaps it was because his voice had none of Walter's sharpness. Perhaps it was because he looked at her the same way he looked at the world around him, with intention, not ownership. "I'm managing," she whispered. Nathan didn't press her then. But he noticed the small bruise near her wrist and the way she winced when she lifted her basket, and he walked her back to the boarding house in silence, offering quiet company she didn't have to fear. The truth came out slowly over the next week. Sometimes it slipped through her words, other times Nathan pieced it together from observation. Walter's anger was escalating. Abigail tried to hide it, tried to believe she could change him, tried to cling to the hope that the man who had written her such charming letters still existed somewhere beneath the hardened exterior. But the letters had been lies. One evening, Walter came to her room drunk and demanding an answer to why she hadn't yet agreed to move into his home. His anger flared into something almost feral. Abigail saw a glimpse of what her life would be like if she married him, a life of isolation, fear, and bruises hidden beneath long sleeves. When Walter slammed his fist into the door frame inches from her face, Abigail made her decision. She ran into the night, breathless and terrified, until she found herself on the outskirts of town. She didn't know where to go, but her feet carried her toward the one person who had offered her any sense of safety. Nathan Aldridge. When she arrived at the Rockinger Ranch, Nathan had just finished settling the horses for the night. He saw her running toward the barn, her dress torn, her hair disheveled, her eyes shining with desperation. "Abigail," he breathed, stepping toward her. "What happened?" Her voice broke. I can't marry him. "Nathan, he's dangerous. I didn't know where else to go." Nathan didn't hesitate. He didn't ask why she had waited so long or judge her for coming to him. He simply nodded with quiet resolve. "You're safe here," he promised. "No one will touch you. Not while I'm breathing." Those words became her anchor. The next days passed in a gentler rhythm. Abigail slept in the Aldridge family's spare room. Nathan's sister-in-law taught her how to churn butter. His young nieces braided her hair and showed her the best places to pick wild berries along the creek. On the ranch, surrounded by rolling fields and the soft chorus of cattle, Abigail found the first sense of peace she'd known since stepping off the train from Boston. But peace, she soon learned, was fragile. Walter wasn't a man to be ignored. He rode to the ranch on the third day, his horse lathered, his eyes burning with fury. Nathan met him halfway down the drive, standing tall and calm, but with a steel edge Abigail had never seen in him before. "She belongs to me." Walter spat. "She belongs to no one," Nathan replied evenly. "Least of all you." Abigail watched from the porch, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely breathe. Walter's gaze shot toward her like a knife. "You think hiding behind this rancher will save you?" Nathan stepped forward, the slightest shift of weight revealing the revolver holstered at his side. "I'm not hiding her," he said. "I'm protecting her." Walter's hand twitched toward his own gun, but the men of Tahlequah weren't foolish. Nathan Aldridge was known for many things, fairness, patience, a steadfast sense of right, but above all, he was known as a man who didn't bluff. Walter hesitated. Then cursed. Then turned his horse and rode off in a cloud of dust. But Nathan knew he'd be back. Over the next week, the ranch strengthened its watch. Nathan kept a rifle by the front door and made sure Abigail never walked alone. She felt guilty, a burden heavy on her shoulders, but Nathan refused to let her blame herself. "You didn't bring trouble," he told her. "Trouble was already in that man long before you came." The final confrontation happened at dusk, when the sun painted the sky in streaks of fire and lavender. Walter returned, but he wasn't alone. 2 rough-looking men rode with him. They approached the ranch with the same arrogance as outlaws who believed fear would clear a path. Nathan stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand. Beside him, Abigail refused to hide. She stood tall, not as a frightened bride, but as a woman ready to claim her life. Walter sneered. "Last chance, Abigail. You're coming with me." Nathan's voice was low, steady. "She's not going anywhere." For a moment, time held its breath. Then Walter drew his gun. But Abigail moved faster than anyone expected. She stepped between the men, not in the line of fire, but close enough to force Walter to hesitate. "I won't live in fear of you anymore," she said, her voice strong. "I won't marry you. I won't follow you. And I won't let you own me." Walter's face twisted with rage. But his hesitation cost him. Nathan leveled his rifle in a single smooth motion, and the other ranch hands emerged from behind the barn, rifles raised. Walter realized he was outnumbered. "This ain't the end," he growled, but his voice trembled. "Yes," Nathan said sharply. "It is." Walter and his men turned and rode off. This time, they did not return. The quiet that followed felt like the first breath of spring after a long, brutal winter. Abigail wept, not from fear, but from release. Nathan stepped beside her, gently touching her hand. "It's over now," he said. She turned to him, her heart full. "Thank you, Nathan. For everything." He shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just stood beside you." In the weeks that followed, Abigail began to heal. She worked with the Aldridge family, learned the rhythms of ranch life, and found strength she never knew she possessed. Nathan became her closest friend, then something more. Their connection unfolded slowly, beautifully, like sunlight creeping over the prairie. When Nathan finally asked her to stay forever, to be his partner, his wife, the mother of the family he dreamed of building, Abigail felt her heart finally come home. They married beneath the open Texas sky, surrounded by the people who had become her family. And as she looked at Nathan, steady, brave, and endlessly kind, she knew she had found more than safety. She had found love, peace, and a life shaped by her own choice. On the Rockinger Ranch, Abigail O'Connor became the woman she was always meant to be.